This is Monocle on Design, a show where we discuss everything from architecture and craft to furniture and fashion. I'm Maylie Evans.
And I'm Grace Charlton. On today's programme, we visit Design Parade, an international festival that champions young designers in parallel events held in the south of France.
We meet some of those involved to find out why this showcase is such a boon for emerging talent.
All that coming up on Monocle on Design.
Welcome to today's show. I'm in the studio here with Grace Charlton for this very special edition. We're focusing on the Design Parade or Parade, depending on how strong your French pronunciation is. Mine is pretty weak, so we're going to stick with Design Parade, I think, for today. But Grace, maybe for listeners who aren't so familiar with the festival, what is it exactly?
It's a design festival that takes place in the south of France. It's split between Hyères and Toulon. They're about 40 minutes, I think, from each other by car. You went.
I went this year, yes. I've just come back over the weekend.
With a little bit of a tan.
Just a little bit, no burn, thankfully.
Yeah.
There's so much going on, and again, this is split across 2 different locations. So, on this show, we're trying to give you a taste of some of the things that are going on. Rest assured, if this sounds interesting, definitely take a look at the website, because the exhibitions are on until the end of summer, really. So if you do find yourself in that part of the world, it's worth checking out the lineup there.
I think it's quite a young festival, isn't it? Like, there's a lot of innovation. It's maybe not as established as Maison et Objet in Paris, but that's its strength. And Toulon is really emerging as a centre for interior design in France. It's got a nice little bit of Mediterranean flavour there as well, which I think a lot of designers like to tap into. The really famous Paris architectural school, l'École Camondo, opened its branch in Toulon as well. The Centre Pompidou has an association with the local museum. So there's a lot of interest and movement coming out of there. So you meandered through to meet some of the many names involved at this year's edition of the Design Parade. Who did you speak to first?
We're going to kick off with the founder and director of the festival, Jean-Pierre Blanc. He's kind of a big name when it comes to creative scenes. So as well as being the director of the festival, he's also the director of the Villa Noé, which is a contemporary art centre and key venues for this festival, but it's also used as a hub for the Fashion, Photography and Accessories Festival that happens every October. So this is a place steeped in creativity. He's very au fait with emerging makers and creatives across a range of artistic fields. So I caught up with him and asked what had impressed him so far at this year's festival.
It's quite impressive to see the energy, and especially the energy of the young talents and the young people. It's the same way for me in interior architecture, in design, in fashion or in photography. And it's very impressive to see how this young talent and these young people in this really nightmare of the contemporary society, how they could sort out everything.
Now, I read that India Madhavi called you the Robin Hood for young designers, which I feel like is quite apt. I think it's a brilliant quote.
I've got 2 children and 2 grandchildren. I think it's really important to bring the better for young people, to support them, encouragement, support, presentation, because often it's very difficult to have the better beginning of the professional life. And I try to organize these sort of things in a better way as I can.
It feels like an ecosystem. You have a finalist from years ago who return, and they're part of the festival, they're part of the scenography. It feels like a very supportive and nurturing environment. Why was that really key?
It's impossible for me in my mind to just bring them with me on a picture and saying, oh, great, congratulations and bye-bye, have a good luck. No, I think when we decide to support young talent and international talents, you have to try to take time to support them longer. When you won a prizes, you came back the year after doing a residency in one of the sponsors of the festival, Chanel or Le Mobilier National or Sèvres or Le Cirva or Hermès. And we try also to bring money for young designers, making workshops for children, making scenography, and that's the ecosystem to make sure that during 3 or 4 or 5 years, they coming back and make also project with us, and it's a good way to connect people.
That was Jean-Pierre Blanc, and I also want to point out that he was actually leading this sort of motley crew on a walking tour of the festival, which I really loved. It's very rare that you have someone so high up who is so clearly involved and wants to be the one sort of showing you round. So I thought that was a really nice touch, and again, just lends this very relaxed sort of atmosphere for the festival.
He's an absolute legend, and he's like the most well-connected person in the Mediterranean. He's great. So you started off in Hyères, and who was the president of the jury there? So next I caught up with Fabien Capello. He's a French designer who's now based in Guadalajara in Mexico. And maybe it's important to point out that the president of the jury also has a presentation at the festival too. We had this conversation in the salon at the Villenoy, surrounded by these wonderful brightly coloured seats and crazy galvanised steel sort of lights. These were all pieces that he'd brought in to transform the space, one open to the public. I asked him to reflect on that process of drawing up a final 10, having been on the other side, I suppose, many years ago.
It was a very beautiful task. I didn't expect it to be so strong emotionally and also like so important for me to be thinking about, okay, what's my attitude? Where do I stand when it gets to selecting 10 young designers? What I knew really from the start is that we had to stand horizontally from those projects and learn from the amount of proposal that we had received. We had to understand what almost 300 participants applied had to tell us, because they were showing us what design will be tomorrow somehow. I was very interested in understanding and maybe bringing to light projects that show their questions and their wonders about what is the role of design in society. As they start to do that, it felt like the projects were really based in a context, whether it's a political context. Of course, it could be just a geographical context. Some of the projects that we will see in the competition are projects that talk about the neighborhood of a city. And this I felt very interested in, like showing people that had to tell us and at least had to define new ways to understand the role of a designer within a society.
And from my understanding, you were one of the first 10 who were here part of Design Parada. What is it like returning, reflecting on the time that's passed since then? How is this competition fed into your practice and your outlook?
When I was selected, I didn't win. I was really young. I was 21 when I applied. I had seen this poster and I thought, I'll send a project, and I applied and I got selected to be one of the concurrents. It was an amazing experience, but what did it really bring me? I thought it's really amazing when you're a young practitioner, when you are experimental in the way you approach things, maybe when you develop your vision, someone tells you, this is good, you should do it. That really makes you believe in what you do. I think what it got me the most is confidence that if I felt I needed to do something that way, then I had to do it. And this was priceless.
That was Fabien Capello there. A big part of Design Parade is the competition and the festivals and the residencies and the support that young designers are offered. And so if you win one year, you're invited to come back the next after having completed your residency. You spoke to some of the winners from last year who were returning, and let's hear a little bit more about that now.
My name is Yassine Ben Abdallah. I'm a designer researcher from La Réunion, which is a small French island between Madagascar and Mauritius. My practice focuses on notion of history and heritage, and this question of how can design be used in post-colonial societies. I was lucky enough to win the grand prize last year, which got me 2 residencies, one in Sirva, which is a research center for glass in Marseille, and the other one in the Manufacture de Sèvres, which is an old royal manufactory that does porcelain. There's 2 spaces in this room. For the Sirva, I explored the history of rum on the island, and specifically one object that carries a lot of history, that is a small rum flask that we call pile plate in La Réunion. Rum has a colonial history as it was produced in the sugar plantations of La Réunion. The master used to give rum to the enslaved to keep them under control in a certain way. And to this day, we still have a huge rate of alcoholism on the island. At the same time, rum has been used as a way to connect with the ancestors, and it's present in many magical rituals where you would drink rum to be possessed by the ancestors or the spirits, or you would give rum as an offering. So I wanted to explore the ambiguity of rum as carrying this colonial history and the spiritual one. Through the repetition, through the exhaustion in a certain way of this shape that is the pile plate that you would mostly find on the street, thrown away, and to show maybe the density and the stories that are hidden within such artifacts.
There's quite an incredible array of different techniques, styles, colours. So we're moving over to these woven and porcelain pieces. Talk me through what we've got here.
I worked with porcelain and fibre weaving. I wanted to work with this idea of value where porcelain is considered as artisanat d'art, art craftsmanship, compared to weaving natural fibre in La Réunion here, which is vacua, that is considered as a poor or popular practices. Creole identity, or the identity of the island, is an assemblage of the culture of the master and the one of the enslaved. And I wanted to recreate this assemblage to be able to produce a Creole vase where the flowers would not be put on top of the vase itself, but rather on those woven plates that are domestic object, a common object that we found in kitchens, to, in a certain way, imbue them with the value actually they have for the people of the island.
And what does it mean for you to have won this award? You've got these residencies and have been able to explore your practice in different ways. What's it been like for you coming back to the parade?
I think it's a lot to process. I'm really grateful to be able to be back with less stress, I would say, and anxiety from last year, to be able to work with materials I've never worked before, with craftsmen and women that are so skilled and talented, and to weave together certain narratives. I think I'm fulfilled. I'm quite happy.
That was Yassine Ben Abdallah. He was a winner from last year who was presenting work this year. But let's talk about this year's big winners. You've put the name Juliette Rougier here on our shared doc.
This was one maker who I had earmarked. When I visited, they hadn't announced the winners at this point. And I was very pleased to see that they announced Juliette was one of the winners. She won the public prize. It's a project which uses cane from Provence. So this is material used for baskets, hats. It's also used in woodwind instruments as a mouthpiece. And what Juliette did is notice that hundreds of these reeds are thrown away by manufacturers each year due to defects or stains. They're not quite fit for use. Got in contact with the marker factory who make reeds and collected all of those effective ones that are usually burned and decided to try and find a new use for them, which in this case was marquetry, so using it as like a wood veneer for furniture. This designer is someone who is finding a solution for a current problem. They're using the waste material from one industry and finding a beautiful new use for it elsewhere. And I think it's really nice to see projects like this win accolades and show that there is a want and a need from the public.
It sounds amazing, and it's nice to see like the public getting involved and voting in on their favourites, because ultimately design is to serve people and it's supposed to be a bit of functionality in there. I can't wait to see what she goes on to do next. Something we haven't really gotten into yet is the beautiful setting, which is Provence and the south of France. It's such an incredible backdrop for the festival. You've got the Mediterranean, the mountains. Tell me how this affected your experience of visiting the design parade.
Hyères, at least, is much smaller. It's a walking tour between the different sites. You're not grabbing a cab from one end of town to the other. So it's manageable. You can kind of see everything within the day, which is incredible. But it also means it's a lot more relaxed. Everybody's just a little bit at ease. They've not got this stress of having to run around. It's all here. You're going to enjoy it, and there's a bit of sunshine too, so what more could you want?
Yeah, the sort of gentle, relaxed pace. It sounds so much nicer than the trade halls of Milan, just off the top of my head. I mean, that is one of the biggest trade halls I've had to walk through personally, and I went to Design Parade a few years ago, and I just remember being like, every design fair should look a little bit like this.
It was a sentiment that Laurence Neren-Mencel of LM Studio also shared. She's a gallerist who runs a space and artist residency right in the heart of town, and actually had an exhibition on there as part of the festival. And this was showing these sort of lacquered wood pieces, very 1970s lovely organic shapes by Atelier Senemo. But yes, here's Laurence sharing why Hyères is such a compelling location, and actually how the event helps to sort of bring life to the town.
People are taken by the colors, the quietness, and that everyone is also, it's a small town in a sense. It can be very big when you have a parade and a festival, but everyone is walking in the same street, so you meet everyone, and after a while you think that you are with friends. We are so lucky because every day it's a quiet life, and all of a sudden you have someone working with broderies like Le Sage who is going to come and explain to you. You have workshop for children all year round with Villa Noailles. We had an exhibit by Schiaparelli. I still remember it. Mathieu Lehane from New York, where I met him, is now showing the Olympic torch, how he designed it. You have people you would never be able to approach, and because it is right here and here, everything is so simple. Everyone knows someone who knows someone, and you can meet it at a cafe. You really are able to meet people without being in Paris, where you have so many people and you can't approach them. So it's really a special place.
Okay, so we've got a sense of the outdoors and the atmosphere. It's relaxed, and we're staying outside to hear from our next speaker.
I think it's important to note that this showcase isn't sort of provincial. We've got big names, big brands involved. The likes of Chanel are partnering and offering residencies with their expert ateliers. But there are also a couple of launches. The car brand Porsche were in the mix, showcasing one of their newest collaborations as part of their Art of Dreams series. And this is like a travelling global art and design initiative where they'd worked with the Dutch artist Thomas Trum. Now, his work called Southern Spins, these large-scale canvases and artworks, one being on the sail of a ship, another a swimming pool. He definitely took inspiration from the landscape and the light of Provence. So let's hear from Thomas now.
Porsche came to me with the Art of Dreams. They said, can we do something open air, movement, into the ocean? Can it travel? I work in a lot of different settings, in a museum or in a gallery. Everything is white and polished and clean, but if you work in a concrete pool and while painting, rain hits the pool and waves almost enter the pool because it's near the ocean, I think that gives an element of Provence. Taking a lot of inspiration from movement, I'm very fascinated by lines, working with my own tools, and then have them here outside, and then having elements of wind and water play a role in it. Yeah, I think that's a new step outside of a perfect studio or a white space. What is happening in the pool, lines are not straight. You have the water and you have the sunlight, and then it looks kind of perfect again because it plays with the line as well. If you take a pool as a canvas, so you have multiple surfaces. I added a magenta layer on top, so it became a kind of a purple. And then in the end, we filled up the pool, and the sky was super blue, sun was out, and instantly the pool didn't look as fresh blue, but it turned a bit purple, deep purple, and then you saw the ocean next to it, and they may have a bit of the same color.
Thomas Trum there, and some of his large-scale canvases will be on show at the Villa Noailles until September.
We've looked at Hyères. I think it's time we head to Toulon for some interior design. And the focus in Toulon is a lot on scenography, but please, pray, do explain, what is scenography?
Maybe we hear the words interior design and we might think of someone's house, someone's living room, but actually in this context, it's, I think, more about setting a scene. So think about visual merchandising, thinking about when you go into a store, what is the narrative that maybe someone wants to create? What is a story? So, you know, you had a mixture of very imaginative renderings of spaces to ones that were very practical, rooted in the here and now, and something you could see in a house maybe next week.
You spoke to the president of the jury there, Marion Mailander. Maybe could you introduce her really quickly?
Marion's a very established interior designer and she's very playful. Similar to Fabien, she had a showcase, she's a guest of honour. And her own presentation at the festival was like a sea view apartment. So this very joyous, nostalgic remembering of her own childhood growing up and having experienced living in one of these sort of apartments by the Mediterranean Sea. There were all these lovely little touches, like a series of doorbells outside labelled with dream neighbours. So this included everyone from like Enzo Mari to Beyonce, and you could press on each of the doorbells and there would be a message that played out. And I think this sort of filtered to some of the designers selected.
Let's hear from Marion now.
It was very important for me to select very architectural project and very conceptual project because for me, interior design, it's about thinking and meeting people.
In terms of your own practice, I can see here it's thinking about the future, but also without it feeling scary or being afraid of what's happening. What do you feel about the next generation of designers from the selection here?
You will see the selection and they think about new material, they think about how to come back on a clever way of building and not expensive stuff or stupid way of doing spaces. And this is very clever. There is a lot of hope on their project.
You've seen the idea on paper, now here in person. What's that transformation been like for you?
Some projects are very close to the first image, and some candidates develop a lot of new design and new stuff in their space. All the projects, they work a lot and they play a lot, and this is very joyful.
That was Marion Mailander. So in Toulon, can you tell me more about the winner of the Grand Prix Design Parade, which is sponsored by Van Cleef & Arpels, no less?
The winner for this particular award was Willy Mollon, and he'd imagine a Mediterranean palace room. Think about all those old pictures, renderings in museums, but this wasn't including any of those precious materials like marble or gold. This was from the point of view of an admirer of these, maybe someone who only had access to the cheap materials bought from a DIY shop, but wanted this kind of grandeur in his own home. Everything was made out of plasterboard, polystyrene insulation, and building site straps. So it sounds like a strange juxtaposition. I think for this to have been the winner shows an emphasis and interest in democratizing design. So it's not about having access to all these really expensive materials that for a young designer isn't really going to be easily accessible. The fact that some beautifully crafted plasterboard can warrant a medal or a prize, I think is a really great message to be delivering for the next generation of designers.
And as we mentioned earlier, a lot of the winners do come back. There's a really strong sort of pool of talent that is being fostered by Jean-Pierre Blanc and the Design Parade. One of them is Biller and Gravelaine, who are a Paris-based studio, and they work a lot with Le Sage, which is one of Chanel's Le 19e ateliers. They're doing incredibly well, and they won a prize a couple of years back, the Visual Merchandising Prize in 2021. Were they excited to return to this place of legend for them?
Oh, definitely. And they certainly had a big enough space. I mean, it was 3 rooms, so fantastic space to be able to stretch your creative muscles. They were working alongside the Le Sage interior team, and this is an atelier that is focused on embroidery and weaving. This particular space was full of these embroidered details. It was a joy to walk around. So let's hear from Marc-Antoine now.
We're celebrating the 100 years of the house Le Sage, and we are presenting different aspects of the house. We have fashion, interior design, we have tweeds, so we have many layers of what the house is doing. The house Le Sage Interior is both Indian and French house. We were lucky to go there in India when we first started to work with Le Sage, and then we discovered the work there, the atelier, and we get very inspired when Jean-François Le Sage asked us to collaborate here on the project. We remembered everything that we saw there, and we created this guest house. It's a mix in between the savoir-faire of France and south of India. The space is divided in 3 spaces. The first one is the entrance, where we have a desk. We can open the suitcase, and then you take off all your clothes with embroidery, of course. And then you have the desk, which is a genre one called Chandigarh, so it's kind of a link with the Indian history. We have the second space, which is the living space, the living room, where we put the eye that Jovanovic used to do with Le Sage, and then we draw a sofa, which is an interpretation of a charpoy, which is an Indian kind of a bed, long chair. We designed the tweed that goes on top of the charpoy. We designed 2 tables in metal. Then we have many embroideries and funny touch, like for example in the fans on the ceilings. We have other small details like the Wi-Fi card, all the details from the hotel room that we can have it in embroidery because it's a way to express and explore different ways of embroidery. And then we have the third room, which is the bedroom. We designed this huge headboard in metal, and then we have inserted in it 3 panels that are embroidered, kind of a cloud design with the waves that is in a hat rattan that is used to do the hats, and then we put it in the edge so it gives some depth and some volume, so we have the shadows that goes on top of the design, so it's very beautiful.
We've had a lot of fun and there's a lot of humour in the details. I'm just looking up ahead and seeing Jules on the ceiling fan whirring round and round. Are there elements of this that you want to continue in your own practice?
It's very a way to push the details very far. It's like a kitchen recipe. You have some ingredients and then you mix everything and you create something new. Clients or the people here will see something and they'll say, oh, I like this, and they can use it. So yeah, I think that everything we draw here can be a source of inspiration for other projects and bring something new, and it's kind of very nice for us to develop.
That was Marc-Antoine Billard there. We focused a lot on the competitions, but there's more going on across the festival. There are loads of exhibitions too. Did you catch any?
Oh, I caught a ton, but there are far too many to cram into this programme. One that caught my attention was the initiative Audace, and this is a design incubator, one that's focused specifically on Moroccan design and craftsmanship. The founder had attended previously and just thought it was an amazing event and wanted to get involved. The exhibition scenography was by a previous winner back in 2016, so again, we've got these winners coming back and this ecosystem. Let's hear from one of the team at Initiative Audace now.
My name is Aïn Benani. I am in charge of external relationship for Initiative Audace, the first Moroccan accelerator for fashion, beauty and design. Its aim is really to enhance and embrace Moroccan craftsmanship and to put light into that. We're very grateful and thankful for Villanois to invite us here and to have our 4 Moroccan designers, which are all women, presenting their design. It's all craftsmanship. We have a lot of texture playing, so there's leather with ceramics. We as well have painted, so this is hand painted, like vases. We have the embroidery. This is traditional Moroccan. Everything is handmade in a woman atelier. There's work on wood as well, which is the tuya. It is usually based in Essaouira, but now it has moved to a little town called Khmisset. So we're super happy to have this part of our exposition.
What maybe is the perception of what Moroccan craft is versus actually some of the pieces seen here?
People are very surprised when they see that this is Moroccan. People usually see Moroccan craftsmanship as something very traditional or something that is not very modern or creative, and we're super happy here to present something completely different, colorful, that is outside of the box, that is craftsmanship still.
To be able to showcase, I think, the breadth, the variety under the same umbrella of Moroccan craft, it feels quite important.
It's a first for us to have Moroccan designer in the design parades. It's bringing light to a craftsmanship, a design as well that is not completely put in front in Morocco. Here we can really see that they can evolve in a different environment, which is not the Moroccan environment. We're completely outside. It's very important for us to show that there's different craftsmanships and they can all go together in the same place.
That was Saïn Benanin of Initiative Audace.
That was quite the whistle-stop tour. I can't believe you did that all in 2 days, across 2 cities, no less, armed with just one Zoom recorder. What are your biggest and final takeaways?
For me, the biggest learning from this is what sustained fostering of young designers actually looks like in practice. I think it's very easy for big festivals and the like to champion a designer, give them an award, maybe a bit of cash in hand, and for that to be the end of the relationship. But I think with Design Parade, what you can see is people are able to return and work with big name brands. Let's not forget, some of these prizes mean that a designer will enter the collection of a major design museum. That's a pretty big deal. It's not only the winners who get something out of this, even just being on the lineup, being added into this ecosystem, it's just such an incredible opportunity. And I really hope that there are other festivals and organisations that can take note.
I remember last time when I went, all these designers were just so happy to meet each other and build their own little network with their peers, because it's a competition, obviously, but I think it's done in a very friendly and warm environment. So it's always just a pleasure to visit and to also get out of a major city and get out of a big centre for design and see what's going on. I don't want to say the fringes because it's a bit too extreme, but there is also a lot of power in not being in Milan and not being in Copenhagen, where everyone's maybe already at the peak of their game.
That's all for today's show. For more design stories, listen to our 5-minute midweek bonus show, Monocle on Design Extra, which airs on Thursdays.
And if you enjoy print, then do pick up a copy of Monocle magazine as well. It's on all good newsstands now.
Today's episode was produced and edited by me, Maylee Evans, with help from Steph Chungu.
I'm Grace Charlton. Thanks for listening.